Welcome to Loose Lips, all the things you wanted to say but didn't know how to say it. Today's topic is Dictators Unite. The more dictators come together, the less aid we should give them. Now, lately we have seen meetings between countries that are less friendly to other countries, less democratic, less human rights, and are proved to be dictators where they care only about themselves and less about the people they inhabit their country. So it comes as a surprise to us all when we see these dictators of countries actually meeting together to try and come together for resolutions among themselves, where they will benefit from working together. Strange, right? Now, dictators are facing common threats and challenges from the international community, such as sanctions, isolation, criticism, and intervention. By uniting, they can support each other diplomatically, economically, and militarily, and resist the pressure from the democratic countries. But we all know this is not going to work, as one hand needs to be transparent with the other hand, and who would actually believe or even trust one another? Dictators are seeking to expand their influence and interest in the regions where they operate, such as the Middle East, Asia, Africa, and Latin America. By uniting, they can coordinate their policies and strategies and challenge the dominance of the US and its allies. Sounds good on paper, but in reality, this is just another version, and in other words, they are having difficulties in their influence. Dictators are learning from each other and adopting similar tactics and methods to maintain their power and legitimacy. By uniting, they can exchange information and expertise and improve their propaganda, surveillance, and repression techniques. Again, who is going to trust who? You already have Iran supplying Russia, China supplying Russia, and both, if not all, of the economies are suffering. What kind of information is one going to get from the other that is actually going to be beneficial? I am sure it won't be technology secrets or even surveillance techniques. And not only that, with what are they going to pay for all of this information? Russia is on the brink of collapse. Iran is in deep poverty, and China is about to lose their rich inhabitants to other countries. Dictators are motivated by personal ambitions and aspirations, such as enhancing their reputation, prestige, and popularity. By uniting, they can create a positive image of themselves as strong and successful leaders and appeal to their domestic and foreign audiences. If dictators are motivated by personal ambitions, you need one person or a group of people to literally step aside so that another can be let in. This is not how dictators work, and I'm sure all of them will be wary of who to talk to. Not one of them will trust the other, and it is not deemed impossible that one, if not all, will provide incorrect information in order to gain what they need and keep close what they already know. These are some of the reasons why dictators are uniting, according to the web search results. However, it is important to note that not all dictators are united, and that there are also conflicts and tensions among them. For example, China and India have a border dispute. Iran and Saudi Arabia have a sectarian rivalry, and Turkey and Syria have a military confrontation. Moreover, the alliance of dictators is not stable or even coherent, and it can be affected by changing circumstances and interests. Therefore, the future of the Dictators Club is uncertain and unpredictable. Because of these conflicts, instability, and even poverty within these countries, it is nevertheless the United States that they look to when natural disasters strike. I say this, if dictators are uniting or even want to unite, then when their country is overrun or struck by the next earthquake, volcano, hurricane, or whatever befalls their country, We should not be sending an aid to these countries. They are literally trying to be united to repress the West influence, but when tragedy falls, they look to the West. I say, you can't have it both ways. Leave them be and stop sending aid over to them. Let them figure out what to do when disaster falls on their country. Dictator countries may look to the West for aid when tragedy strikes because they lack their own resources, capacity, or even willingness to deal with the humanitarian crisis on their own. They may face challenges such as poverty, corruption, mismanagement, sanctions, or isolation that prevent them from providing adequate relief and recovery for their people. Now, in this statement, not only is this correct, but this does not seem like it is our problem. Not only is it not our problem, I see it as they brought this issue on themselves. I mean, think about it. If Russia had a huge earthquake right now or a serious hurricane, do you honestly think the West would supply aid at the moment? No, they wouldn't. Dictator countries may look to the West for aid when tragedy strikes because they want to improve their image, reputation, or legitimacy in the eyes of the international community or their domestic audience. They may seek to portray themselves as cooperative, responsible, or compassionate leaders who care about the welfare of their people in the world. But this is false because they only look when they see tragedy or desperation. They are not responsible or cooperative in any way. And yes, there may be issues with the people that this will affect, but I do not believe that aid should be given to a country that is only looking for help when they see no other solution. This should have been thought of before they made their threats or bombings or inhumane suggestions and laws within their own countries of choice. Dictator countries may look to the West for aid when tragedy strikes because they want to gain some political, economic, or strategic advantages from the donor countries. They may use the aid as a bargaining chip, a leverage, or a pretext to extract concessions, favors, or support from the West on other issues or interests that matter to them. Because let's be frank, dictators only care about themselves, and it is of no concern to them what happens to others. They are liars, cheaters, and have little need for truth or consequences. Dictator countries may look to the West for aid when tragedy strikes because they have no other choice or alternative. They may face pressure, coercion, or intervention from the West or other actors who want to influence or change their policies or behavior. They may also face competition, conflict, or hostility from other dictator countries who are not willing or able to help them, which is astounding when you think about it. They come together to try and form an alliance, but everyone knows when tragedy strikes, none of the other countries they wanted an alliance with will help. Look at Russia and Armenia. For so long, Armenia relied on Russia to help them with security guarantees. When that went out the window, they were left on their own, and their borders are now in question, since they were attacked without the guaranteed assistance of Russia, which they relied on so heavily. These are some of the reasons why dictator countries look to the West for aid when tragedy strikes, according to the web search results. However, it is important to note that not all dictator countries look to the West for aid, and that there are also cases where the West refuses or restricts aids to dictator countries. The relationship between the West and the dictator countries is not always straightforward or even consistent, and it can be affected by changing circumstances and interests. I believe that the West should always restrict aid when these countries are in need. Not only will it set a precedent, but it shows that they cannot bend their plight to when they are in need. And the West will not bend to their need just because they are in need. Sometimes you have to let bad things happen. If tragedy strikes and the country is not respectful in terms of human life, or feels the need to bomb or even threaten other countries, then let them fend for themselves or find a way without the assistance that they are seeking. Sometimes a hard truth is needed in order to get others to reflect. Will such a measure make them reflect? I doubt it, because dictators have a mentality that it won't happen to them or nothing can threaten them. Yes, I understand that there is the perceived notion that the West is a lot richer than these nations, and that it is understandable, but this does not stop these corrupt and dictators from squandering away funds that they can be using themselves for infrastructure, self reliance, or even propping up their own country. Instead, they prefer to line their own pockets in one hand and have the other hand out when they have a need. These countries find ways to make missiles and other weapons of destruction while the people of the country are starving. They find ways to make shoddy buildings when people are homeless in their country. They find ways to have yachts and summer homes when people in their own country are illiterate or don't even know where their next meal is coming from. I get it. This means that without aid, these people will be even worse straits. But who is to say that if aid is even presented, they will be used to help those that are in need? Who is to say that these corrupt governments won't use the aid for their own gain? It has to stop. We can no longer feel the need to help everyone that doesn't deserve our help. And I believe that these nations that are trying to come together to demoralize the West, to further destabilize the West, to further denounce the West, are not worthy of our help. I get it. Without our help, the following scenarios will take place: humanitarian crisis. If we don't help dictator countries in times of tragedy, such as natural disasters, wars, famines, or epidemics, we may be ignoring the suffering and needs of millions of innocent people who are affected by these events. Many people may die, get injured, or displaced, and many more may face hunger, disease, or violence. The lack of humanitarian aid may also worsen the existing problems and even create new ones, such as environmental degradation, social unrest, or human rights violations. There can even be moral dilemmas. If we don't help dictator countries in times of tragedy, we may be violating our moral principles and values, such as compassion, justice, or responsibility. We may be failing to uphold our humanitarian obligations and commitments, such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Geneva Conventions, or the responsibility to protect. We may also be losing our credibility and reputation as global leaders and partners, and damaging our relations with other countries and organizations. There may even be security risk. If we don't help dictator countries in times of tragedy, we may be exposing ourselves and others to potential threats and dangers, such as terrorism, migration, or instability. The lack of humanitarian aid may fuel the resentment and hostility of the people and the regimes in the dictator countries, and make them even more likely to resort to violence or extremism. The lack of humanitarian aid may also destabilize the regions and the world and create opportunities for other actors, such as rival powers or non state groups, to intervene or even exploit the situation. These are some of the consequences of not helping dictator countries in times of tragedy, according to the search results. However, it is important to note that not all dictator countries are the same, and that there are also challenges and risks of helping them. For example, the humanitarian aid may be misused, diverted, or blocked by the dictators, or it may have an unintended or negative effects on the political, economic, or social dynamics of the countries. The decision to help or not to help dictator countries in times of tragedy is not always simple or clear, and it can be influenced by various factors such as interest, values, resources, and strategies. So, when will it end? On one hand, you have countries that hate the West, but look to the West in times of crisis. So, do you turn your back on them and let them say what they want? Granted, I agree that innocent people will suffer, but unfortunately, maybe this is what is needed in order for the people to finally stand up to the dictators and demand change without our assistance and help. Because in a weird kind of way, when you think about it, by us even providing aid, we are letting the dictator off of their responsibilities. If we don't help, then the people lay blame where blame should be held, and that is those in power of that country alone. Maybe then they will be removed, but only a circumstance will be able to tell. That's it for today. Thank you for listening to Lose Lips. Until the next time.